Namaskar, everybody. Welcome to the self-development talk for today. How to use creativity to enhance our productivity, our mindfulness, and our spiritual awareness. This talk is loosely based on my insights from this great self-help book called Managing Your Day-to-Day. We've spoken about creativity and about innovation a few times. So today, I try to summarize everything that we've discussed by talking about the cycle of creativity. After which, I'll talk about a few examples, discussing how I used creativity to help me stay mindful, spiritual, and productive. Quick recap. Last week, we spoke about creativity. We spoke about how creativity is a human tendency that we all have, that we're all born with. And creativity isn't something that we only use when we're doing something artistic. I think we're all creative in our own ways, and that can mean, right? That can mean I'm just creative in the way I do my hair, or in the way I smile, right? Or the way somebody might carry themselves around, right? So all of these are opportunities for us to be creative, and all of us are creative in our own unique ways, just like these few examples. Something that differentiates creative tasks from other tasks that are not creative, is that creative tasks, they have less guidelines compared to the so-called non-creative tasks. And in some cases, creative tasks might have no guidelines. So a quick example, in my first job out of college, I worked as a statistical assistant for a data science company. So my job, I had to use mathematical models. I had to program them for analyzing data, right? So creating those mathematical models in code, in program, wasn't necessarily extremely creative, because I had all the guidelines I needed to make that model, that I had learned them in school, and my mentor had trained me to code those models, those mathematical models, right? But he'd also taught me that the presentation, the way I deliver my insights that I gain from that mathematical model, is sort of where the rubber meets the road, right? So let's say I have this huge data about how people drive to work, right? And I have to tell my client about how people drive to work, so that my client in some way can give the right navigation directions on their phones, right? So if I learn things from my mathematical model, and if I tell them about what I learned purely in mathematical terms, they wouldn't necessarily find my analysis helpful, right? Because not everybody talks math, right? So that's where the creative aspect comes in, right? So making that mathematical model might not necessarily be creative, but presenting it the right way, in a relevant way, will be creative, right? So when I made that mathematical model, I had guidelines. If I ran into a technical error with my code, I could go on the internet, troubleshoot my code, right? But there's no guidelines for making my presentation, right? So there's no wrong or right way to present. However, there is a way that my presentation can either be relevant or irrelevant, right? There is no right or wrong. So there's no guardrails for that creative task, which is why I decided to include this picture from the Grand Canyon, right? I think creative tasks are kind of like being out in nature, where we don't necessarily have guidelines or guardrails to walk. We can walk anywhere, unlike walking in a busy city where we do have sidewalks and traffic lights, right? So there are guardrails, right? But so in nature, we can walk anywhere, but because of the lack of guardrails, we do have to be careful, because we might hurt ourselves, right? But on the other hand, it's so much, in my humble opinion, it has a different kind of beauty, I should say, right? And there's just so much we can do being outdoors, and just not doing anything outdoors is also doing something, in my humble opinion. With that, let's talk about the cycle of creativity. Let's say I get an idea. I know a friend of mine's visiting, right? So I feel inspired to make something that he likes. let's say my friend got his COVID shots and now he's immune, so he's going to visit me. And I decide to use some time. I have some time at hand. I feel inspired to make something for him to make him happy, right? This little notepad here is my recipe. I have the ingredients, right? The little brain is my own brain, my mind, because I need it to make something. And there's a heart, right? Because I want to make it lovingly, not only because today is Valentine's Day, but because I want to be in my loving awareness whenever I can, right? So with these ingredients, I make a nice spinach pie, right? My friend comes over and he likes it. So do I, right? So this little cycle of creativity, I think, falls under these four general buckets. You've, there's there's some inspiration or some reason for motivation that drives you to do something, right? Then we all have our own resources in our own ways, and then we actually go through the act of creation, of creating something, and then in some ways we have an opportunity to do a quick pulse check of how that whole cycle went and how does the output feel like. So the few books that we've discussed in right from Managing Your Day to Day, we also discussed Smarter, Faster, Better, another great self-help book from Charles Duhigg. All of these books, they generally talk about creation in these four buckets, and they're not in all of these buckets, they sort of flow into each other. They're a cycle, right? And in this example that I gave, I felt inspired first and then I began creating something. But it doesn't have to start at the inspiration point. It can start anywhere. Like you might realize, hey, it's the pandemic. I have lots of time. There's not too many places I can go. So I have a lot of time at hand, right? So time, a valuable resource, you find you have a lot of it. So you might choose to start at the resources point and then go about the creation. And you might decide to do a pulse check, right? Because you have lots of time, you made something, now you want to make sure it came out right or wrong, and maybe it didn't come out that well, and that inspired you to do it again, hopefully with a better outcome this time, right? So these books talk about creation along this cycle. Something else that they talk about is the importance of awareness. In these two books, I found out that people who successfully create something, they show a good awareness of their inspiration or the reason that motivated them to do something. And these people, they never forget what inspired them to do it in the first place. Because let's face it, we all face limitation of resources, or when we do the pulse check, we might not be happy with what I made. The spinach pie might not come out the right way, right? But if I do always stay in touch with what inspired me, that's gonna drive me through this whole cycle. And it's gonna drive me through the creation, through the pulse check. And if I didn't like it, it's not gonna make me stop. It's gonna make me keep doing it until I'm satisfied, right? Also, creatively successful people, they also show an acute awareness of the resources that they have. So they might have a resource that they really value, and the same resource might be something that somebody else might not even consider. So an example, you might have a really critical manager at work or a really critical colleague at work. So anytime you do something, they're going to have some sort of opinion about it, and they're going to tell you what else you can do to make it better that time or the next time, right? So the popular notion about these people might be that, yeah, they're not too friendly, so it's better to stay away from them. But successfully creative people might actually really value this person because they know this person is a really valuable resource. What they tell me is going to be really important for me because nobody else is going to tell me that. So I'm going to really value what they say, and I'm really going to value them as well. So long story short, people who are good at this stuff, they're hyper aware of what inspired them and of what their resources are. They're really resourceful, which kind of makes sense, right? Kids, they're going to play with things we might not even consider as playthings, right? If you give like my neighbor, he's like a 3.5-year-old boy, his favorite toy in these past few weeks is a little blanket, and he has it on his head all day, and he says, when I wear this, it makes me a cat, so now you call me a cat. And that's all he needs to keep himself entertained. He doesn't go to school because of the pandemic, but he's happy that way all day, every day. Something else that's very important, that I think is a bit more obvious to realize, is the effort, right? We all know we do need some effort to create something, right? But again, it's very important to put in the effort towards the creation, but it's also pretty important to put effort towards checking your pulse, towards checking in and getting feedback from anybody else that's going to experience your creation. So it can be your manager, your colleagues at work, it can be your friend or your family for whom you're cooking, right? Or you might find yourself on the other side of the table. Somebody might make something for you, you know they want to do it the right way, so you can, if they're willing, you can give your feedback to them, and if they appreciate that, they're gonna really thank you, right? They're gonna consider you a really valuable resource the next time they try to do something like this, right? Okay, I'm gonna share a quick story about how creativity helped me travel on trains. This is a story about how I use creativity to help me stay mindful. This is a train station in Mumbai in 1870. This is when India was a colony of Britain, and this train station is called Churchgate Station because one of the exits of this station was actually an entrance to the church. So in 1870, looks like it wasn't too crowded from this picture. And this is how it looks like right now. This photo looks like it was taken before the pandemic because I don't see people wearing masks. But this is how Churchgate Station feels like during rush hour. And this is how train travel feels like during rush hour. Like this train looks like it's running somewhere between like 8:30 a.m. to like 9:30 a.m. or so, right? So I did this journey from a station similar to Churchgate and trains like these for 7 years when I was in Mumbai going to college. And a little like inside joke amongst people who use trains for commuting in Mumbai, they say the only skill you need to travel on these trains successfully is to be able to face the right direction. So if you want to get into a train that's coming towards your platform, you just face it and the crowd's going to push you and take you in the train with them. And if you know you want to get off in this oncoming train station, all you need to do is face the door in that train. And when your train arrives, the crowd's going to take you with them outside of the train. And that way you don't even need to take any effort. But I've been there and it works somewhat similarly, but my experiences weren't positive, especially in the beginning few years that I did this. One day I remember I was pushed in so hard inside the train that I banged against somebody who was standing in front of me and my glasses broke. And of course it hurt me because my glasses broke. That's how strong that impact was, right? And I did this for a few years. And if you know me personally, or maybe if you can make out over this video, I'm not like the most strongly built person, right? I'm not the tallest. I feel pretty strong and I think I have good stamina, immunity, but I'm not like, the most like well-built person you'd know. So when you're relatively, even if slightly smaller than everybody else, and you do get pushed around like this, it's gonna feel severe. It's not gonna feel pleasant or good, right? So after several such experiences, I felt like, right, I really liked trains. I love train travel. I love traveling in general. I like the diversity in Mumbai. It's a nice metropolitan city, and people from all different walks, from all different cultures are there. And I did realize that not everybody's bad intrinsically. It's just the situation that might bring out some bad sides of people, right? And while I couldn't change how people behave during rush hour, there was something I could change about myself, right? So I tried to follow that rough cycle of creativity. I tried to use creativity to tackle this problem, right? Because I couldn't, increase my height or my weight overnight. Neither could I change people or how they behave during rush hour. So I started with my inspiration. I wanted to have a somewhat positive experience during my commute, right? I wanted to stay realistic. I couldn't say I want to get on the train without, a single person pushing me. That couldn't happen, right? India's a populous country, so that's bound to happen. It's fine. As long as I don't break my glasses or ram my face in somebody, that's fine. After doing it for 7 years, right? I knew I had some resources. I knew my efforts, my attitude is gonna matter, right? If somebody pushes me, I don't have to push them or give them a look each time, because again, we have to display empathy, right? We're all just trying to either get home or get to work in this crowded, hot, humid train, right? So things are gonna happen. It's fine, right? And I journaled about it. I spoke with friends and family, and I also realized that my experience during train travel, it was just a symptom of my experience like growing up in general, because I was 15, 16 years old then, a time of great change for all of us, right? So what I experienced in the train was sort of another representation of what I was going through with life in general, right? So all of these resources that I was using not only helped me with my train journey, but with my journey of life, right? And as I spoke with my friends, journaled, introspected about it, I did realize that this journey, in some way, there's something to appreciate about this. Like I feel like using Mumbai trains, locals is what they call it in Mumbai, for 7 whole years, it's sort of given me like a Jedi like training. Like now I know my way around people in crowded places. I can sort of instinctively tell by body language who's gonna, be somebody who pushes. I also did discover so many people who look out for people around them, people who might put themselves in danger or in extreme discomfort, who might, you know, get up so you can sit down, um, and when the journey is like few hours long. So I discovered all of these things, right, through the journey, and I felt grateful to have these as some resources that I had, right? And every day after getting to college or after coming home, I had my experience during the travel and after it, and I asked myself, was it up to my expectation? Did something I tried today help me feel better or worse, right? And that's how this iterative process kept going on over and over again for 7 whole years, right? And slowly, I noticed patterns start emerging. I realized a few years into that journey, I realized a few years into my journey as an adult, I was 20 to 23 years old then by then, right? I realized the beauty of slowing down, right? And of choosing not to react, because it might seem natural, it might seem like, yeah, this is the way everybody reacts in this situation, this is the way I've always been, so this is my second nature. But actually doing something creative and out of the box, such as not reacting, such as displaying empathy, or just even feeling it in your mind, right? Letting somebody blow off steam. They're human, you're human. So if you at some point push somebody because they pushed you, it's fine. Hey, I forgive myself. I decided I could be a better person, but maybe this is who I am, and I accept it, right? It's not supposed to be perfect. What is perfection anyway, right? So on and so forth. And again, right, what I experienced, right, my efforts, my inspirations, my motivations, they were extremely unique to me, right? And they're definitely going to be different for you, but this whole cycle is going to be generally the same. And we might at some point, right, not have to get a pulse check because we're just so good at making that spinach pie, right? Or like our resources might, we might not be hyper aware of our resources because we start doing something that's extremely new, so we actually don't know if we even are any equipped to do something like that, right? But so it's fine, we just still start with this whole journey, and we're okay being not right, because some experiences, they're just, making a mistake is the best way to learn something about either a situation, a skill, or even about yourself, like I did in this case. Okay, I have a quick example about using the same cycle for helping with my productivity. It's pretty similar to the mindfulness slide, so I'm gonna skip over this and share a few things I learned about enhancing my productivity creatively after being in the workforce for about 6 years now, exactly 6 years now, right? So after working for 6 years, I realized again the importance of slowing down. Few years into the work schedule, into my 9 to 5, I realized I didn't have a schedule and I needed one, right? Eating, resting, exercising the right way was important. Being with the right kind of people was so important. Always being in touch with the why, with what motivated me, right? I'm not going to work just for the paycheck. I'm going there because I want to learn how to do data science. I feel like there's something in the data that I can learn and help the world be a better place, right? And through doing this work, I want to sustain myself and people I love and care for, right? That is my motivation. So, okay, today I don't feel as bad, right? Commuting to work or doing something for the 700th time because I know it's getting me somewhere slowly but surely, right? And again, it helped me accept the transience and the fluidity of everything. So something that might have worked for me, yesterday, it might not work for me today, and it's okay. I'm okay being wrong because hey, I just learned another thing that may work one day, might not work another day, right? Because again, I think there are tasks with guidelines, with guardrails, like right, like writing a program. Even the programming, I think, is extremely creative. I think of it as poetry. It has a structure, though many times you lose the structure and you come up with a whole different way of writing a script, right? But exactly like it, life also, I feel like, has its rights and wrongs, but you don't have a wrong way of living. You have your own way of living, and you find that out making your own mistakes, going through your own train journeys for years and years, and letting those subtle patterns emerge for you, patterns that are going to be unique for you, and patterns that hopefully your friends are willing to hear out, your family is willing to hear out, and if you feel they're helpful, like me, you could share them out for the rest of the world. Thank you for hearing me out. um, Please visit us on our website for other sessions that we have recorded in there, and I'd like to know from you if this reminds you of using creativity to be productive, to be mindful.
Back in the show. Thank you for that talk, Apurva. I want a spinach pie now.
Right?
Um, West Coast over here, it's only almost 6 o'clock for me, so definitely dinner time. I'm like, oh, spinach pie.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really love that story about riding the train in Mumbai for 7 years. I feel like that just really says something about creativity and mindfulness and how we can change our perspective and how we're showing up. I mean, I do not deal well with crowds at all. I'm not sure that I could have had that same experience. My reaction probably would have been, well, just not going to do train travel anymore. Just gonna go to school from my house or move closer, whatever. Like I would have come up with a different creative solution. So yeah, but I think that it's pretty amazing that you were able to take something that was so stressful and turn it into something that was maybe not pleasurable, but at least more pleasant. And I feel like that's a good reminder for all the time, but it's a very good reminder during this pandemic of people feel so stuck at home and just want things to go back the way they were before, and why haven't I been vaccinated, and when's that happening, and come on, let's go. And I think that this topic and perspective helps with the reminder of we're not stuck. I mean, in some ways we are, but also we can change our experience of even a crappy situation. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what came to mind for me.
Yeah. And it taught me things about myself. Like when I moved here, right, I worked in New York City and I loved it. But then I realized that, every place in its own way has its own stresses, things that, you ask yourself, why am I putting myself in this? And I guess that is, yeah, it's just, I guess, part of this physical world we inhabit. But then, yeah, it also showed me this big truth about myself is that I prefer to trade that with like the suburb or like the country life. And thankfully, thanks to technology, I can work remotely now, even after the pandemic. But yeah, I learned that great truth about myself. And again, being honest here, I feel like some of my friends too, this is their reality too, that they would prefer to be in a calmer place. But somewhere along that cycle, they maybe don't do the pulse check. So they don't hear back from themselves. And that's why they're going through that whole cycle, but missing just one step. And that's why the cycle like doesn't progress, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, that pulse check is so important of, do I even like this? Is this something that I even want for myself? I feel like it's really easy to fall into a cycle and just think, well, this is the way that it is.
Exactly.
Got to live with it, the end. And that's just not true. I mean, sometimes it is in a way of, you were traveling on the train and that was your reality if you had to do that. But the way that you showed up for it of, okay, maybe I can journal, maybe I can listen to music, maybe I can do whatever to make the situation better. That was your way of changing it to make it work for you, as opposed to, well, I just gotta suffer, the end. So I think that's just really important to remember as we're continuing to go through the slog of the pandemic.
Yeah. I also decided to actually share that story because I feel like, again, like creative things don't have to especially be like artistic or even like supposedly creative. I feel like we, just like we discussed, we can be creative about most things. And literally like thinking out of the box, how much cliche it might sound, I think is works. But I think, yeah, knowing your way around the box also is important, like knowing the limits of that box so you can.
Purva and I have been doing a lot of chatting ourselves. I'm just wondering if anybody who's currently watching has any comments that they want to share in the last minute before we do our announcements. If you have something to share with us or the other viewers, please go ahead and type that into the chat.
Yeah. If you're thinking outside the box, just put it in the chat box.
A box within a box.
Exactly. There is no box. Okay, I guess
there's nothing. It's all been said.
We've covered it all.